The American embassy in Tehran has been occupied by demonstrators. There is no indication that any of our people have been hurt.
On November 4th, 1979, the revolution in Iran took an unexpected turn. A band of students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took dozens of Americans hostage. This would become one of the worst diplomatic crises in American history.
It is a massive of this American embassy of Tehran. We are not against the decision of the U.S. We are against of the national authority in Iran.
Emboldened by the uprising of the Islamic Revolution, the students lashed out at the United States and took hostages 52 American diplomats and other citizens. The embassy takeover was supposed to be a platform for protest. It took on a degree of permanence, though, as the students soon made their demands clear. Hand over the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was undergoing surgery in New York and had been diagnosed with cancer. They insisted he face trial for crimes they said he'd committed during his 37 years in power. The hostage standoff would last 444 days. It became a huge political liability for U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who would lose re-election to Ronald Reagan in 1980.
All Iranian diplomatic and consular officials have been declared persona non grata and must leave this country by midnight tomorrow.
Similarly, AP journalists had been declared persona non grata 2 months before the embassy takeover. Now they were being allowed back into the country. The Tehran bureau was back in business. Thierry Campion, a young photographer from Paris, was chronicling the revolution. He'd already spent 4 months photographing Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini while the exiled leader was living outside Paris. As it happened, the time spent staking out Khomeini in France would prove useful for covering the embassy takeover.
So this is Khomeini in Neuf Chateau that was exiting the place where it was doing his meeting. So I put plastic on it and I cleaned it here during the revolution. And it helped me a great deal because people saw that I was his friend. Because you have an impression of closeness in these pictures, even though I told you he never speak to me, but it was the best, yeah, the best passport.
Many photojournalists weren't so lucky. Some had their cameras smashed or their film stolen. But Campion managed to move through Iran without incident. It helped that he was French.
The anti-American sentiment was terrible. Really, they hate America. Because for them, America supports the Shah, they hate the Shah, so they hate America. And the fact that Khomeini was in France in exile and were kind of seeing the only country, non-Muslim country, except to have him over there, was a huge plus.
So Campion lingered outside the U.S. Embassy compound, waiting for the blindfolded and bound hostages to be paraded before the cameras or released.
The embassy indeed was a world unto itself, and no information came out of that embassy, official or unofficial, that we were privy to. We could go there for a while and look through the iron gates. We could read all the banners and graffiti on the walls. We could walk around the embassy if we wanted to. But we could get no information at all from inside in any way, shape, or form. All the information we got was picked up from people outside.
On January 14th, 1980, the Iranian government ordered American news organizations to leave the country again, citing biased reporting. That didn't deter AP correspondents from chasing the story from the outside. They turned to radio broadcasts from inside Iran for information. Scheherazade Faramarzi, a former AP journalist who was born in Iran, worked her government sources from Beirut. As she recalls in this 2009 interview, they were very forthcoming.
They would give me details of, let's say, the negotiations that were going on between Iranians and Americans over the hostages. The Washington Bureau would ask me, could you find out what Washington is telling the Iranians, through Algeria? I said, why don't you ask them? And they said they won't tell me. So I go up and told them, and they told me.
In April 1980, with the hostage crisis showing no signs of ending, Carter sent U.S. armed forces to rescue the 52 hostages. It was a catastrophic failure. 8 American service members died when their 2 aircraft collided in a desert field southeast of Tehran.
It was my decision to attempt the rescue operation. It was my decision to cancel it, and problems developed in the placement of our rescue team for a future rescue operation. The responsibility is fully my own.
The fallout was significant. Relations between Iran and the U.S. sank even lower. Canadian press correspondent Bob Douglas captured the overall acrimony in this AP radio dispatch.
I know a Canadian state read on state radio that if the United States repeated rescue attempts for the hostages, the government would be unable to control the bills and control the hostages. And he then said later that if the United States does try a rescue mission, the hostages and the attackers will die.
No one died, but the hostages remained captive for several more months.
The government of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States finally reached an agreement on resolving the issue of the hostages today.
After extensive negotiations, they were released on January 20th, 1981. It was the last day of the Carter presidency and the day of Ronald Reagan's inauguration. And what of the Shah? He left the United States and made his way back to Egypt, still fighting cancer. He never faced trial, and he never saw Iran again. He died at age 60 on July 27th, 1980. The Shah's death was a final confirmation that a monarchical tradition had given way to an Islamic republic that endures to this day. The Shah was gone. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini was back, and the Islamic Republic had been realized.
Soon after the revolution triumphed, the great expectations and optimisms and hope on the part of the Iranian people were quickly replaced by disillusions and despair.
It didn't help that executions in revolutionary courts were becoming commonplace. Amir Abbas Hoveyda, Iran's prime minister for 13 years and a close ally of the Shah, was killed by a firing squad after a secret trial. The execution alarmed the international community. But as former AP journalist Thomas Kent noted in this 1979 radio dispatch, the new regime just didn't care.
Foreign criticism of the Hoveyda execution said that Hoveyda was a useless person, corrupt at the core, and should have been punished.
What's more, the new regime was enforcing a strict interpretation of Islam. Revolutionary forces stormed bars, breaking bottles of alcohol in the streets. Khomeini also ordered women to wear veils, which continues to this day.
A lot of people supported the revolution because they didn't like the Shah. They thought the regime was corrupt. They thought it was oppressive. So they greeted the revolutionaries in the streets. Khomeini returned to the country and so forth. They were very, very supportive. But they had not bargained for the fact that the regime would be very strong in what they considered the essential trappings of Islam, which is to say the veiling of women and things like that.
Some women welcomed this return to tradition. Elsewhere, though, there was resistance. In northwestern Iran, the Kurds, an ethnic minority group, were happy to see the Shah leave. This sentiment wouldn't last long. Kurds said they wanted autonomy. The Khomeini government labeled them separatists. As the weeks melted into months, relations between the two didn't get any better. An uprising, the biggest in the country, took hold. Kurdish factions clashed with revolutionary forces, but Khomeini wasn't backing down. In August, the Iranian army invaded the Kurdish city of Mahabad with tanks and fighter jets. More than 500 people died. In the early days of the revolution, the Western press had been seen as allies, no longer. Now, the revolutionary government began kicking foreign correspondents out, and local journalists on the ground were a crucial part of that. So on September 1st, AP's new bureau chief, Nicholas Tatro, and AP journalist Irene Fisher arrived at the Ministry of National Guidance to pick up their credentials. The press chief told them that the authorities might have to lift the press cards of 2 local reporters. 3 days later, the AP reporters were called back in.
He was sorry to tell us, but he was going to have to take away our credentials and that we would no longer be able to report, and that several of us, myself included, only had 48 hours to get out of the country, and that he had no way to guarantee our safety.
Given the pervasive anti-American sentiment in Iran, this was alarming. So Tatro, Fisher, Kent, and AP reporter Philip Dopoulos scrambled to get out. 2 Iranian reporters were also barred from working for AP at all. Tatro dashed back to his hotel room. When he got there, his passport was gone. He managed to secure a replacement from the U.S. Embassy just in time, and he headed to the airport.
We were really worried about our safety going through that airport. It was a little bit like the movie Argo. Just pretty high tension, worried about what they might ask or take us aside, and that would have been it.
Kent ended up taking a separate flight to Moscow, along with a group of Russian engineers who were also being expelled. It was unclear when, or even if, the plane would leave.
Eventually, we did get on board, and we crossed the border into the Soviet Union. And they announced on the PA system that we've now crossed the Soviet frontier. I applauded with everyone else because, compared to Tehran, I felt safe.
In the end, all 4 made it out. Behind them, they left a country increasingly hidden from the eyes of the larger world. In the next episode of Revolution in Iran.
Nothing new under the sun. That's what the Bible tells us, brothers and sisters. Ecclesiastes 1:9-10 reads, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. And I wanted to start out with those 2 brothers and sisters, showing you 2 things. One, it was about getting rid of the influence, right? The news. But did you also notice that when they were trying to get rid of the Shah and have the Shah put on trial, they used the same blueprint they use today? The university students. Did anyone not find that weird? I mean, you don't have to find it weird. The Bible never lies. Nothing new is under the sun. And you notice how they were talking about dates of September and then I think there was a date about May, and then there was January 20th. And you notice how it was really shared to the world around September, right? Yet I think it happened in August, if I'm not mistaken. Brothers and sisters, we're right where the world is playing right into a playbook. Okay, right into a playbook. And if you understand history, you'll understand what is about to happen. Now, you may say, Minister Shab, okay, well, who are they going to put in? I'm going to get there. But understand that everything isn't completely the same. This lesson will segue, this lesson will end, and then we'll segue right into the biblical understanding of Iran in regards to destruction of Babylon. Okay, so before I did that lesson, I wanted to give everyone an importance of why Iran is so important. Okay, but back to the subject. Notice how the same playbook is being used. And we were told in the Bible, think it not strange. We're at a time where the world is talking about one war. And remember, if you remember the Ukrainian war, brothers and sisters, if you, like I said before, Christ said there shall be rumors of wars. We're past that. You know the rumors of wars that have been going on for years? North Korea, North Korea, North Korea, North Korea, North Korea, North Korea, right? They've always been talking about North Korea, North Korea, North Korea, right? And then Russia goes and hits Ukraine with a little something. I mean, these are not bluffers, okay? These nations are not bluffing. And I would only say that. I would only say that because we're no longer in the prophecy of rumors. If you still believe that wars are rumors, you might as well be lost with the rest of the world, because I made the lesson when the bombs drop. I'm gonna make another lesson, most high willing, called Armageddon, and it's about to happen. The most high said, and I'm not gonna get too far into it, but he said that he would what? In Isaiah 13. Get that for y'all. He said he would stir up the Medes, or stir up the Medes. To wake, to stir up, identical with, be made naked. So that means the Most High would place them in a point where they had to defend themselves, and it was either them or someone else. That's what stir up the Medes means. Okay? Stirring up the Medes. And even for a basic dictionary term, Stir up means to disturb, to move, to change, place in any manner, to agitate, to bring into debate. This is key. I'm going to show you tonight, or this morning, excuse me. I'm going to show you. My clock's a little off mentally, very tired. Sorry. But I'm going to show you that everything they're doing right now, they are bringing into debate. I want you to write this. Stir up and then put bring into debate. All right? Then look at this term and write this term, to incite to action, to instigate, to prompt. Write all these words, because when I show you these videos, do understand that you're going to say, whoa, man, the Most High is finally doing what he said he would do, and this prophecy. He's stirring these people up. And like I said from the very beginning, you can, hey, Minister Yashab said it, this would not go away. Didn't I say that? I said this would only escalate, right? I said it. And look what it says, to put into motion. So the Most High is allowing this to get this country into motion. It's about to happen. It's inevitable. It's going to happen at any moment. Okay. Look what it says, to excite, stir up the Medes, to put into action, to begin, as to stir up mutiny, insurrection. What do you see now in Iran? An insurrection against the government. This is what the Most High said he would allow to happen. And as you can see here, it says he is continually stirring. To be in motion means to just keep on making things worse and worse and worse and worse. Agitation, tumult, public disturbance or commotions, tumultuous disorder, seditious uproars, means to stir these people up. Brothers and sisters, if you didn't believe me before, if you didn't get yourself ready before, clocks are ticking if you are in that whore called Babylon. Clock is ticking, right? Now, let's get with our scriptures, because we had left off at, or we finished with Ecclesiasticus 23:15 to 21. So I'm going to start from that very last verse. Ecclesiasticus 23, verse 21 reads, "This man shall be punished in the streets of the city, and where he suspecteth not, he shall be taken." Now we understand through the news, there's been tons of occurrences happening where people have been getting taken. Okay. Over there in Iran, different things. Okay, and I'm going to break it down. All right. But let me share with you the truth. Okay. as I always do, but let me share with you the truth, and it's gonna rock. Second Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through 7. Now, maybe I could have put this scripture last, but I want you to remember all these things as we move into this lesson and all these videos that I show you. Second Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through 7 reads, "This know that in the last days perilous times shall come." Perilous, troublous, okay? Difficult, dangerous, furious, people high in emotions, anger, crunching, pressure. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now, for this particular lesson, I want you to think about, and as soon as I show you these lessons, you're going to understand why I chose these things for you to highlight. First, lovers of their own selves. I want you to highlight, or you can write lovers of their own selves. The next one is proud. I want you to write proud. The next one is disobedient to parents. Now, in some translations it says authorities, in some translations it says parents. For this time, in this particular lesson, we're just going to go with parents. It says unthankful, and that's going to be at the end. I'm not a person who's siding with no Islam regime or anything of Islam or any other religion, so to speak, but I'm going to show you what that hijab means according to their people in the Middle East. According, and I'm and I'm going to let the women say it. Okay? And when you find out the real reason for the hijab in that so-called burqa, you're going to understand why I say unthankful. Unholy, go ahead and write it. Okay? Go ahead and write unholy. Go ahead and write without natural affection. Now, once again, remind you, I told you all of this pertains to what's going on right now in Iran. Without natural affection. False accusers. We can put false accusers. We can put fierce. Okay. Despisers of those that are good. We can put that. traitors. And this goes serious. Okay, this is serious. Okay, because Christ said the mother and the fathers would give one another up, they would betray. And what's happening in Iran? The parents are calling the Revolutionary Guard on their children who want to go protest and have them arrested, and vice versa. The children who don't believe in the protests are also calling the Revolutionary Guard on their parents. They're betraying one another. And it's happening in the households. It starts in the household. Heidi, high minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And you write this one down most definitely. Lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. And you're going to remember all these things. Just watch. All righty. With that being said, let's get right into the first video then. Okay. One moment. Thank you. One moment, please. I apologize. One moment. Thank you for your patience, brothers and sisters. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is Masih Alinejad. She's an Iranian journalist and women's rights activist. She lives in exile in the US. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
For a few years, you've been encouraging Iranian women to take off the mandatory head veil and film themselves. Since the death of Mahsa Amini.
Now, I'm going to cut through this, okay, because I'm not going to rewind through it. It's a quite long video, but I want you to pay close attention to these words. She's been what? What did he just say?
Mandatory head veil and film themselves. Since the.
Thank you so much for having me.
For a few years, we've been encouraging Iranian women to take off the mandatory head veil and film themselves.
This woman who is sitting in New York City has been doing work to incite and excite women that she's never going to meet. She's never going to experience the backlash of what she's exciting them for, and she's promoting disobedience. Now, like I said, I'm not for Islam or anything. I'm all Bible, all Most High, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, without a shadow of a doubt. But this is how it starts. This is how it starts. Could you believe that they're putting on the news and they're hailing as a hero someone who teaches people to go against order, right? When Christ said, give to the Romans what's the Romans, right? But hey,
Since the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian woman at the hand of the so-called morality police in charge of ensuring that the
and there you go again, another punch. So called morality. Okay, so this is all about a nation who is trying to cleave onto the words of holy. Yes, we know they ain't following the Bible, but they're trying to hold on to something, right? That's why they have morality police, but they're saying so-called.
bill is properly warned, the country has seen what many call an unprecedented wave of protest. Women taking off their hijabs, burning them, cutting their hair in public, girls openly defying their teachers, shouting death to the dictator. We're obviously
Now, girls shouting at their teachers. This is what this woman is promoting. Does anyone not see what's wrong here? Now, I'm going to show you something real quick. Okay. And second Ezra, and for all the feminists that may watch, this lesson, I want you to remember a scripture from good old myself. Okay. If you never remember anything, remember how the Most High said in 2nd Ezra 16, the virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms, the women shall mourn, having no husbands, the daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. In the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish of famine. Now, this is about a woman. They're promoting women being disobedient, right? And the turnaround of this is men going to war. I tell you they weaponize women? And if our women, the women of the world, don't wake up, I mean, have mercy. If you think it's bad now, wait till all the noble and the men who stand for something are dragged off to war or executed because they won't participate in war. If you think it's bad now, wait till then, till you're left with people in certain communities. And you know what they said? They used to say, if gangsters are so hood, if they're so gangster, they're so tough, if cartels are so tough, if mafia is so tough, why don't they join the military? Why don't they go fight and save everyone instead of fighting over property? Instead of fighting over a block that's not theirs, they didn't make it, they didn't create it. It belongs to everyone, right? So you're going to be left with those people. All the other men are stuck or executed. But this is what's happening. And they're going to wish that they didn't listen to these people moving forward.
also seeing a crackdown, but despite a communication blackout imposed by the regime, the movement lives on. What is happening right now in Iran?
A revolution is happening. People are furious, especially after the brutal death of Mahsa Amini. She was only 22-year-old Kurdish girl, came from her city Saqs to Tehran for a vacation. But after 2 hours, her body, dead body, was given to the family. Why? Because just a bit of her hair was visible. She was not even unveiled. She was not, I actually want to show you. She was wearing this headscarf like this. But in Iran, bunch of police walking around, if you show a little bit of your hair, they arrest you, they beaten you, and they kill you, like what they did to Mahsa. That is why now many Iranian women wearing their headscarves, cutting their hair to show their anger, not only against compulsory hijab, against the whole regime. And this is just the beginning to an end. They want an end for gender apartheid regime.
Right. So we've seen protests. We're seeing images
Whoa.
essentially through.
Did anyone catch it? They want an end to what?
Beginning to an end. They want an end for gender apartheid regime.
Gender apartheid. Now, apartheid, we remember in South Africa, there was, right? And so they're saying gender apartheid. If women and young girls have the ability to storm the streets and they're not shooting all of them, that's not gender apartheid. They're not locking them all up. That's not apartheid. But let's continue.
Right. So we've seen protests. We're seeing images essentially through social networks. So it's difficult to know how widespread this is. But we've heard the response from the regime, a crackdown, and also condemnation by the supreme leader, saying that this was a foreign plot against Iran by the Zionists, their allies, and their collaborators.
Can I tell you something? This movement has leaders. And the leaders are within the society. They have agency. They're not agent of any Western government.
No, they tell on themselves if you listen. This movement has a leader and they have an agency. I'm no fool. I caught you. Come on now.
And the leaders are within the society. They have agency. They're not agent of any Western government. But I have to tell you, those who help the Iranian regime in the West, they should be blamed. Because I actually been warning many years the female politicians, the Western countries, about the dangers of hijab police. They never helped us. Instead, the Western female politicians, they helped the Iranian regime by wearing hijab, by bowing to the same regime. I mean, your president, Macron, from from France, many times tried to have a deal with our murderers. He never asked Iranian women to take off their hijab. The U.S. government's main focus is just to get a nuclear deal. Ségolène Royal, Federico Mogherini, Catherine Ashton, and many high representatives of the EU from the Western country, they actually saving and empowering our regime, not asking Iranian women to go to the street and overthrow their regime. This is the true face of Iranian women, saying to the rest of the world that we are here and we are asking an end for the Islamic Republic. We're not agents of any Western government. Instead, the Western government are trying to save Iranian regime.
Right.
They trying to save America and Europe, trying to save Iran from inflation, from evictions, from highest debt America and Europeans have ever seen. You talking about doctors and lawyers are protesting in the streets because they can't even survive. This lady, the people they use, it's sad because there's people who really believe what they're saying. That's the true sad part.
We're hearing talks that both the US and the EU are considering potential sanctions. Is this already something, or is it much little too late?
It's too late. Let me be very clear with you. Me and millions of other women have been telling the Western countries that when you actually dealing with these murderers, you're giving billions of dollars to the Iranian regime, it goes to revolutionary guards to kill people. And now you've been witnessing that how teenagers, TikTok generations, are being killed in the streets. What is their crime? Just removing their hijab. And for years and years, President Macron, President Biden, and many female politicians around the world, they were telling us, shh, you're causing Islamophobia, or they were saying that we don't want to interfere in any kind of internal problem. But now you are witnessing massacre happening. More than 100 people got killed only in 2 weeks, but the number even is more than this. The Iranian regime cut off the internet and killing innocent people. Guess what? At the same time, the tech companies, the US tech companies, giving verified account to the murderers. Taliban and Islamic Republic have their own accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, but at the same time, Iranians and women of Afghanistan, they're banned from using the same social media. So you see, empty words not going to save lives. Empty words and little sanction is not going to help Iranians to survive and fight back for their basic rights. We need action. We don't need like people just cutting their hair. We want the Western government to cut their ties with the Islamic Republic. We want the Western government to recall their ambassadors. And we want an international women's march taking place across the globe. You remember for Women's March, Burkina Faso, in America, in France, all the feminists got united. What is different between Western women and women in Iran and Afghanistan? We want the Western female politicians, feminists, take to the streets and be the voice of Iranian young generation who are getting killed right now.
Right, but obviously you know full well the history of those movements. There was a movement most recently in 2019, over 300 people killed in just 3 days. And let's rewind to 2009. You were in Iran at the time, the so-called Green Revolution, and there was another woman whose death was actually filmed on camera, Neda at the time, and it didn't change. The regime survived through a crackdown. So why do you think a revolution is happening and the outcome will be different this time?
That's a very good question. Look, Iranians made up their mind this time. This is the first time, actually, which makes it different from other massive protests. This is the time that Iranians were like shoulder to shoulder, men and women, burning the headscarves. And this is not just a small piece of cloth. Believe me, this headscarf is the main pillar of the Islamic Republic. It's the biggest point of the Islamic Republic. Basically, this headscarf in the hand of the Islamic Republic is like the Berlin Wall. Now women and men shoulder to shoulder, they're trying to tear this wall down, and the Islamic Republic won't exist. This is
Now, remember what the Berlin Wall stood for. That's all I'm gonna say. Or the back story of the Berlin Wall. Remember the back story.
the beginning. But what makes it different that right now this is a revolution against Islamic ideology. And Iranians know that in 2019, 1,500 people got killed. They know that they might get killed as well. So they pay the price. They risk their lives because they want to end the Islamic Republic. And let me tell you something. President Obama mentioned about Nida Abbas. She was a symbol of Iran protest in 2009. But what happened after that? Obama was trying to get a deal with the Islamic Republic. In 2019, again, 1,500 people got killed. What President Macron did, trying to get a deal with Rouhani and now Ibrahim Raisi. And let me tell you another thing. Ruhollah Zam, a journalist from France, got kidnapped to Iraq, and from Iraq to Iran, they executed him. What's going on? Still, you didn't shut down the embassy in France. So that actually helped the Iranian regime to survive. You know what? When people of Iran managed to shake the regime and through actually different massive protests, at the same time, the Western government, the Western politicians, they go and shake the hand of the state regime. That can help Iranian regime to survive. Otherwise, Iranian people will make up their mind. They will end this regime, and the history will judge the Western government, the democratic countries.
Right. You personally.
That's right. History will judge. the democratic countries with a nuke. My, oh my.
Are, I understand, living under FBI protection because of an alleged plot against your life by the Iranian regime. Obviously, they accused you of being a U.S. propaganda person because you.
Now, they tell on themselves. If you in witness protection, why even say it? Okay? And then why even show the background, your home? Why even there's a lot of whys. And my thing is this, right? This person is just not some feminist activist. What activist you know has is under witness protection? Right? But yet he said Iranians claim her as a US propaganda tool. And I told you you were gonna see her face, didn't I? In the beginning. And look at her now. Hey, and she's on the news almost every week about Iran. You ain't never heard of her before until now. She's a tool.
For Voice of America and so on. I mean, how serious of a threat is there against your life? Maybe even more so because of what we're witnessing and we've been discussing in this interview.
First of all, I have to say that the word safe is too luxury for all people around the world who dare to speak up against Islamic ideology. I'm in safe house under the protection of the FBI.
So please understand that she just said 1 minute it's more than a hijab, right? And then the next minute she says it's against Islamic ideology, right? You may say, Minister Ishaq, why do we have to know about this? Do you understand that the only two religions in the world that hold to Abraham is the Bible and Islam? Okay. Now, I don't go over there and tell me about Judaism because they got two books of the Talmud, and they say in the Talmud, I shared it with y'all, that Christ is an excrement and Mary was a whore and all the blasphemous things you could imagine. And they don't even believe in Christ, but yet, Google this. The rabbis are talking to the Messiah right now in Israel as we speak. What? That's not scripture. You know why it's not scripture? It's because they don't believe it. Okay? So pay attention. Once this comes from Islam, because eh, there's more women in the world than men, so they have to use women. Okay? Now they got, and it's sad that people die because actual real people die from this stuff, right? Things that could have been a miscommunication or a mistake, people die from this stuff. So that stuff is sad. But we're talking about them complaining about morality police, keyword morality, because we know they don't care about police. If you look at Babylon, they was trying to defund the police, right? And now they look into target morality police, right? I mean, anything that could somewhat give some sense of protection and structure, uh, they're against it. But once again, as I said, this will go from Islam to Christianity or the Bible. This is where it'll go. And once the persecution is done there, and the Most High did it just this way, so that once they leave Islam, they can follow the Bible. Because if you get rid of the Christians first, then it looks like Islam is the reigning way, right? So the Most High is, no one cares about Hinduism and Buddhism. Let's be real. It's all about, in the world, Christianity and Islam. Get rid of the Islam and let me say what? And when I say me, the government, let them say, let's show the Christians what we're going to do to them without saying we're going to do it to them. She's talking about a religion. She's not talking about an ideology. It's a false religion. That's true. But this was under the guise of a religion, keeping some things modest, right? Some things. I'm not advocating for it because they got a lot of filth up in it too. Just watch. This is going to turn to Christian persecution. Just watch.
He was protected as well. What happened to him? Because of the fact which was issued by the leaders of the Islamic Republic, he was the target of assassination plot recently. As I mentioned about Wolozan, they lived in France. What happened to him? He got executed. So as far as the Islamic Republic is empowered, not only me, millions of other people around the world want to be safe on US soil, on Western soil. Yes, of course, I'm receiving death threats every day. My family are under pressure in Iran. Every single word that I'm saying to you right now, I don't know what they're going to do to my family. They put my brother in jail for 2 years, brought my sister on TV to disown me publicly, and they were trying to kill me here on US soil. I'm not scared of my life.
Yeah, she's not as scared of her life. If you really cherished your family, would you really be putting them in jeopardy? What a dummy. I'm, it's common sense, right? It's common sense.
Me and it's gonna make awareness around
this woman is a liar.
Should be boycotted and kicked out from everywhere, then I'm ready to be killed. I'm not scared of my life. What scares me that the whole world is watching the massacres happening in Iran and they don't take strong action. That is scary. Believe me, if the democratic country do not get united to end Islamic terror, the Islamic terrorists will get united and they will end democracy.
Is she trying to incite war? And she said the countries don't unite together and end Islamic terror. Islamic terror will unite. Is she inciting war? Yes, she is. And please understand, they have to put these people on to generate the minds of people so that it doesn't look like war just happened for no reason. Okay. Just talking points here and here. Look how it happened with Ukraine, right? No one knew anything about Ukraine until there were bombs being dropped and soldiers frontlining the country, right? Like, seriously? And then we found out a little bit more months later what was going on over there. Yes, I did share that stuff as well. So it's coming, brothers and sisters.
Now I'm talking to you, French citizen is in prison, Swedish citizen is in prison, US citizen, UK citizen, Belgian citizen. Why these countries do not get united and ask the Islamic Republic to downgrade, just downgrade the diplomatic relation and ask them to release innocent political prison. The Islamic Republic understands only one language of pressure. And if the democratic countries do not punish the Islamic Republic, there is no point for them to stop killing people.
Just as a very quick conclusion, so you really think that this time around, It is, in front of our eyes, the beginning of the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
This is the beginning of the end, because Iranian young generation, they say that we are ready to die, but we're not going to live under humiliation. I call on Western democratic countries, take action. Otherwise, you are responsible about the killings of Swat.
Masih Alinejad.
The beginning of the end. Please mark those words, because in the headlines in the near future, I'm certain we're going to see this is the beginning of the end. just wait for a few months. Just wait. And no one seems to be able to say what's going on here. No one is able to see. So why is this the beginning of the end? I'm going to come back to Romans, because you need to understand why I'm reading Romans. Why is this the beginning of the end? Well, do I have something for you?
Well, to discuss this moment in Iran and where the protests go from here, I'm very pleased to be joined now by the Iranian political expert Ali Fatollah-Nejad. Thank you for speaking to us on France 24 today, sir. As we heard in that report, these protests were, of course, triggered by the death of a young woman. But a month in, would you say the protests are still specifically about women's issues like the hijab, or are they now morphing into wider social and economic unrest?
Well, I mean, this has been the story from day one, not into 1 month now. Since day one, it was very clear that the trigger was the hijab issue, but the revolts moved, very political. And they're calling for the abolition of the Islamic Republic. So this is very clear for weeks now.
They're calling for the abolition. They're calling to abolish. They're calling to dismantle.
This is posing a great danger to the system of the Islamic Republic, the greatest, relatively speaking, in their history.
Do you really think this protest movement could bring down the regime in Iran then?
Well, we never know, but what we surely know is that we're amid a revolutionary process in Iran. So
could this bring down the regime? You see the words they use? Beginning of the end, bring down. They need to do something.
it has moved beyond, as I said, the gender apartheid system, which is which is very closely linked to the Islamic Republic. But people are very much calling for for regime change from within.
Did anyone catch the slip up? The regime change? He meant to say overthrow.
But people are very much calling for for regime change.
Did you catch it? This is planned. One more time.
But people are very much calling for for regime change from within, and this is we see intersectional lines involving various classes, various ethnicities, the involvement of the students, of school, children, and also more lately this week we see sections of the working class also joining by staging strikes in strategic sectors of the Iranian economy, namely in the petrochemical industry. So this is very clearly a revolutionary process, and revolutionary processes.
Now, this is an overthrow. This is an overthrow, a coup. This is an overthrow. Why? He just said this is spreading to the what? To the petrol oil industry. Wait a second. October 14th, 2022, Iran's fifth month oil revenues increased by 8 times. So wait. You mean to tell me that last year they increased 11 times and this year they increased by 8 times? It sounds like they're making money. So why stop now? Right? What? Why stop now? And what do these men have to do with a woman's hijab? Nah, this don't smell right. It's an overthrow. It's a coup.
Hard to, to foresee.
And I mean, where do you think the protest movement goes from here? Because clearly there's still a significant amount of anger. People are remaining in the streets, and the authorities are continuing to crack down on people. So what do you think happens now? Is this just going to be a cycle that we will see for weeks? People protesting, and then there being a crackdown? Or is there some kind of different end game that you can envisage here?
End game, beginning of the end game.
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge the immense courage of the Iranian protesters who are staging peaceful protests against one of the most brutal dictatorships on this planet.
Does this look peaceful? Did any of the videos and the previous lessons, did that look peaceful? It was lighting people on fire. Peaceful. This is starting to sound like Babylon and Antifa. This is starting to sound like Babylon and Black Lives Matter. I don't think it's strange. Come on now.
And so the regime's response is, simply relying on the iron fist. And nevertheless, people are very courageous, and they know that they want a different system. This is, an accumulated collective anger that has been in Iran for years, and is now showing. Even if the regime succeeds to put it down, it's only a matter of time when the next eruption of popular anger and rage kind of re-emerge. So this is a revolution.
It's only a matter of time before it re-emerges. So they're telling you it's just gonna get worse, right? They're telling you they got it's like a prepaid bill, right? It's just something's just gonna happen and happen. And it's just gonna keep escalating until what, brothers and sisters? Until war is the only option. Until war is the only option. Now there's young girls and women who get raped in India. I don't see them putting India on TV all over the world, right? There's girls and young women and women and mothers in Africa, right? Facing the same situations. What is going on here? It's all going to lead into the last lessons, okay? The destruction, the war with the Medes.
Process that is ongoing now.
And I wanted to ask you specifically about the hijab, because there were comments very recently by Ali Laranjani. He's a well-known conservative politician in Iran. He's an advisor to Ayatollah Khamenei. He said it might now be time to re-examine the enforcement of the hijab law in Iran that says that women must wear a hijab in public. Do you think his intervention was significant? Does it suggest some kind of cracks in the Iranian regime?
Not at all. I mean, this is primarily for Western consumption, for elements in the West that still believe that the whole issue about the protests in Iran is not about a revolutionary movement, but it's about the hijab issue. And so it's very clearly an attempt by the regime to appease the anger that is that is widespread in Iran. But it is a futile attempt. No one is really believing that first of all, the regime gonna, engage in meaningful reform, and secondly, that this is about the hijab issue anymore. So this is, not to be taken seriously.
And these are protests, as we've been reporting, led by women. But I wonder whether you think that it is significant that we are seeing apparently more men turning out in the streets, playing a supportive role to women who are leading them.
Well,
And boy, do they love it. The women are leading the men. Does this something sound wrong here, don't it? Something sound wrong. Nah, never mind.
at the forefront are the women of Iran, who have been, immensely discriminated. Also, since I talked about gender apartheid, so they're suffering legally from, laws that have been put in place since after the 1979 revolution, plus a new generation, young generation. And of course, men are, also part of this movement since the first, since they won again. So it's not a new phenomenon. And because they know, they realize that the end to the discrimination of women is intimately linked to also human rights for everyone and democracy for everyone. So this is a societal understanding now that men and women in Iran do share.
And just
Wait. Men and women share the same values about a hijab. I know you're probably wondering, where is this even going? Just breathe, because I got the answer. I'm going to share with you what type of human rights they want. We're going to get there.
finally, would it be fair to say that thus far this has largely been a middle class revolution or revolutionary process in Iran, and it's now spreading to the working classes, or is this firmly the middle classes who are out in the streets?
No, not at all. I mean, this is not a middle class issue. As I said before, we see different classes taking part in it. And this is a quantitative jump to previous protests that we've seen in Iran that were either driven by the lower or the middle classes. This time around, we see both classes. And this is the intersectional alliance that poses a grave danger to the regime. We see protests, for instance, in the poorer southern parts of Tehran, but also in the more affluent parts of Tehran. And we see, as I said earlier, now the involvement of parts of the working class that are, tremendously also suffering from the socioeconomic misery that is engulfing the countries. Do not forget, in Iran, you have 3/4 of the population approximately living in poverty. So the middle classes have been extremely hollowed out. But this is, implicating both the lower classes and the middle class.
Ali Fatollah-Najad, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us on the programme today.
The beginning of the end. They want to abolish the ways. Okay. They want to abolish their regime or their Islamic Republic. That's what they want to do. So, let's get into it. Romans chapter 1. Verse 18 to 32 reads, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible thing of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, that word again, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Now, remember this part, vain imaginations. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worship and serve the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up to vile affections. Now, remember this, vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use in that which is against nature. Okay, that's a part of also that cutting of the hair. And likewise, also the men leaving the natural use of the woman, burn in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, keyword, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, that's a key word, fornication, that's a key word, wickedness, that's a key word, covetousness, that's a key word, maliciousness, that's a key word, full of envy, that's a key word, murder, debate, deceit, that's a key word, malignity, key word, whisperers, backbiters, that's a key word, haters of God, most definitely a key word for this situation, despiteful, keyword, proud, keyword, boaster, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, keyword, without understanding, keyword, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful. And we're going to put without natural affection. Now, this will turn unmerciful, meaning we're gonna see some sick things they're about to put on the table for Iran. How is it that you're supposed to liberate a country, but you want to bomb them all? Like, that's what they asking for, right? That's what they asking for. How you think they're gonna overthrow these people? Wait, you mean to tell me you're gonna overthrow your country, your government, and so who's gonna be in charge? Who they gonna put in charge? And how did that person get in charge? How did that name even come up? Right? It's a setup. Who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Now, oh, did I exit out of it? Oh no, silly. Okay.
Welcome back to the Meet the Press Now. Anti-government protests in Iran are showing no sign of letting up, even as police brutally crack down there.
Wait. Excuse me. I apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to play this one just yet. I do apologize. You know, there's like, what's going on? I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Massive anti-hijab stir continues to rock Iran. Amidst right-wing calls for leadership to step down, the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has now issued a warning to the protesters. Listen in.
کم کردن این نهال رو می‌توانند نزدیکی بکنن. این نهال امروز تبدیل شده به درخت تناور. غلط میکنم فکر کندن رو هم کسی بکنه.
Khamenei also accused the country's enemies, including the US and Israel, of fomenting the riots. Now, the warnings comes after the Iranian activists called for fresh nationwide protests. All this despite the alleged brutal crackdown by the Iranian authorities that has killed dozens so far in the country. The Iranian government has blocked access to the internet services as the movement enters its fifth week. But the activists issued an online appeal for a huge turnout for these protests, calling it the beginning of the end. The appeal seeks protesters to gather at
Another newscasting. Gender apartheid, the beginning of the end. The Most High be giving so many signs. If you really don't pay attention, I don't know what you do. They didn't say the beginning of the end for ISIS. They didn't say the beginning of the end for Afghanistan or the Iraq war or the war in Egypt or in Somalia, right? They didn't say, or Boko Haram, right? They didn't say the beginning of the end for that, right? Wake up.
various spots where the security forces are not present to chant death to the dictator. The Iranian government has reportedly asked retirees of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to gather. The country's security forces have been carrying out a campaign of mass arrests, and they have detained various young activists, journalists, and even students. Now, the Iranian government's bloody crackdown on these protests has drawn international condemnation and new sanctions on Iran from Britain, Canada, and the US. The protests over the death of a 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died 3 days after being arrested by Iran's morality police. It has now turned heads globally. The stir marks one of the boldest challenges to the clerical rule since the 1979 revolution. The US President Joe Biden on Friday said that he was stunned by the mass protests, reiterating Washington's support for these demonstrators. Biden on Friday also called on Iranian leaders to end the violence against the country's people.
Wait, how can Joe Biden support these people? Something don't sound right. This is the beginning of the end. Better wake up.
I want you to know we stand with the citizens and brave women and men. For real. For real.
For real.
And who right now are demonstrating to secure their very basic fundamental rights.
Did anyone ever ask what fundamental rights are they talking about? Don't worry. Minister Yashab is always on the job, okay? Always on the job. Continuing this one.
Were originally spurred by the death of Mahsa Amini after she was arrested by Iran's so-called morality police. 2 other teenage girls have died while involved in the protests, further fueling demonstrations.
This one girl that's been killed.
They were involved in either of the deaths, claims that have been condemned by international aid groups. We should note that NBC has not independently verified those reports. But despite the danger, women and girls have continued to join this protest. Some female university students in Tehran even took off their headscarves and heckled Iran's president when he visited the school last week. And an op-ed in the New York Times describes how, quote, schoolgirls with backpacks and black Converse sneakers joined the revolt. They marched down a street in a suburb of Tehran, the capital, waving their school uniform veils in the air. Azadeh Mabini is the author of that op-ed, and she joins me now. Azadeh, I appreciate your being with us. You were just in Tehran as these protests grew. What is it about the protests in the streets there that are making them so significant, that make this such a unique moment, and how does it compare with what we saw, say, back in 2009?
What's different about this round of protests is that they are extraordinarily broad-based. They cut across traditional dividing lines in Iranian society. So they're bringing out people from different class backgrounds, from different ethnic groups. They're scattered all across Iran's regions, so geographically diverse. People of all different ages. I saw 70-year-olds out there. I saw mothers wearing headscarves who were taking out their teenagers who are not wearing their headscarves. So it's incredibly broad-based. So even if the numbers aren't huge, the solidarity behind it is massive. And it's really, I think, a unique point in which the state is staring out at a society that is moved on. The state is as though it's on a different planet than these young protesters. They're Gen Z, they're sophisticated, they're plugged into global culture.
Gen Z, remember them. Worst generation of mankind. Well, let me not say nothing because I got banned off of Instagram for saying Gen Z is an abomination, but I digress.
They're very secular and educated, and they're just not willing to accept morality policing any longer.
And one of the things that struck me, I was going to say, as I read your column today, was this idea that it's really sort of the different hijab laws as they relate to the elite and the well-connected and those more ordinary Iranians in that country.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that is, I think it's hard to pick up on unless you've spent significant amounts of time inside Iran in recent years. But morality policing has exactly become very selective. There are parts of the city where working class people, working university students come and go. Metro stations, the place where Mahsa Amini was picked up. These places are patrolled, maybe not daily, but women walking through them always have the fear that they could be picked up and something on their bodies gets them in trouble. Whereas there's many pockets of Iran where the regime's elite, young people affiliated who've become wealthy through the system, they enjoy villa parties and they live in mansions and their lifestyles are detailed on Instagram. So this kind of different social freedom that can be afforded by an elite class is something that ordinary Iranians see, and I think it fills them with real fury. Why do some people have freedoms based on their privilege while the majority don't?
I mean, it's the same thing everywhere you go, right? You think them celebrities took the you know what? But they're going to tell you to do it, right? You think their children took the, in fact, Bill Gates said his children didn't take the you know what. But your children got to. Everyone know. They just playing with the dumb, deaf, and blind. That's what they doing. That's all they doing. They playing with the emotional.
And I think the takeaway that a lot of people watching this are asking is where this goes, where this leads. There are now reports that oil workers are going on these anti-government strikes. How does that escalate the situation there? Where do you view this?
And I'm calling it. I'm going to call it right now. You heard Minister Yashad. And no, I don't have no insider views or anything like that. They talking about oil. The next one will be the food workers. The next one will be the food workers. Watch. Oh, we're hungry. Do something. Do something. This is so unfair. Watch. And when they do the food, then they're gonna do some. They're gonna start talking about intervening, like war intervening, because in order without food you can't survive, right? So they're gonna talk about an invasion. They that's behind doors, but they're gonna talk about war because the next shortage. Oh, now we have the oil industry. Next is the food industry. Just pay attention, brothers and sisters.
Going right now?
Well, it's a really important question, and it's hard to tell. We do, as you say, see the protests persisting. They're expanding into different spaces, into high schools, into oil fields, into strikes of different kinds. It seems as though the state is just trying to muddle through. It wants to avoid a really bloody confrontation. At the same time, it doesn't want to concede. But these movements, this movement is leaderless, and there's no interlocutors for the state. Any opposition has long been marginalized out of politics. So the state really has no one to even dialogue with. It's really.
Now, who says that, right? Who says this is leaderless? Whenever you get an organization, every rally has a leader. Come on now. I mean, people in Babylon, they go to a million man march and all those different things, right? All those marches. You don't think there's leaders for each state and each community, right? So you mean to tell me, okay, that what, 10 to 15 cities in Iran just all of a sudden, with no unison whatsoever, just decided to protest at the same time and do the same things? Come on, think it not strange.
Isolated and cut itself off from society so much. So what happens now? The state could respond in a way that radicalizes the situation, or the movement could radicalize itself by simply being ferociously unsatisfied with how Iran's leaders are responding to it. So I think things can never go back to how they were, but exactly how it's hard to see right now.
Things can never go back to how they were. This is the beginning of the end. Minister Yashab told you first, remember? Remember, I'm not a person to say I told you so, but if you're in the wrong area, I can't say I told you so. Because you ain't going to be alive when this stuff get finished.
This question perhaps is what more you think the U.S. government could be doing, what specifically it should be doing right now to try to help support this effort?
That's another tricky question. The United States is in a situation where it doesn't really have a great deal of options. It has not been able to reestablish a diplomatic relationship with Iran properly through the nuclear deal that President Trump withdrew from. It has imposed economic sanctions that have impoverished Iranians and that have really formed some of the backdrop, the economic kind of devastation that is the backdrop and the context to these protests. I see the United States responding by sanctioning the morality police. These are sort of feel-good sanctions. In effect, they're quite silly. They target groups in Iran that don't make policy about these issues. It makes sort of countries feel good as though they're going, directly on the offensive against what these protesters are up against. But I think what would be more productive is looking at measures that help civil society. What can keep the internet open? What kind of sanctions exemptions could allow civil society to breathe again? What are the restrictions that have kept Iran so isolated? That kind of forward-looking action, I think, would be quite welcome.
But she just said there's no options. This is the beginning of the end because there are no options left. They tried the nuclear deal. They tried to open up embassies and do different things. and they wasn't budging, it's time. We know what America, Babylon does best. They kill. They kill and destroy other nations. And they just destroy anyone that doesn't fit their agenda. Simple as that.
You making time to share your perspective with us. Thank you so much.
Sad, but hey. And so they mentioned Gen Z. So for those of you Babylonian viewers, Z is how you would say Z overseas. Okay, whether in Africa or in the Middle East. I think also the same for Europe as well. Okay. Now, Generation Z. I'm not going to read through these articles, but I will put the link in the description. As usual, Iran, raw fury is in the air. Then, more than thousands of protesters arrested in Iran. This is the 13th from Criminal News Network, CNN. Then, no going back. Gen Z at the forefront of protests in Iran. Okay. How Gen Z became the Iranian regime's most fearsome opponent. Okay, now. So now we have another divide. This is not just religion, this is also of, or it was never about gender, but it's not about gender, it's not about religion, it's about Gen Z. Now, Gen Z, they say, and I totally agree with this, is made of zombies. The most less educated, the most depressed with mental issues and disorders, the most emotional and weak natured generation to date, and the greatest generation that has the least amount of morals, values of any other generation. Now you see why I said in Timothy 3 to mark those things. You see why? Because if you're in Babylon, and I can say this because I've taught individuals from Generation Z, from Africa, different nations, even South Korea, even in Babylon. And yes, in Babylon, they are the worst. Like, I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to have to teach those children. Good grief, those children. I mean, think of it, and maybe it's my experience, but look what's going on, right? The drag shows and all that stuff. Like, they had to bring it out to a generation that's okay with it, right? They're okay with that. It's catering to that generation, right? It's catering to that generation that boys wear dresses, that girls grow, facial hair, like that men could give birth. That's that generation. They're okay with that. And then you have Gen Z women. See, this is all about Gen Z. It has nothing to do with with um with the head covering. It's all about how can they destroy Iran. They're going to use the women, and they're going to use the Gen Z women, because the last, and prove me wrong, I wish, the last generation to have some type of decency and respect for the Most High, or what some would call God as well, is the millennials. That was the last one. Now, I'm not saying that everything that the millennials do is correct, but that was like it. Like, I've never seen, growing up, myself a millennial, I've never seen where people would just openly wear satanic shirts and have it on their cars and different things. And now, when I used to go to the schools in Babylon when I was there, and I see these kids wearing it as if it's like something cool. Like, it's everyone. Black, white, brown, don't matter who it is. It's everyone. And I'm like, man, 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 like Generation Z is the generation of zombies, because all they do is sit on social media. All they doing is some stupid challenges. All they do is think they know everything. I call them Dr. Googles, because they don't read books. They barely, if they do, but they don't go to the library. Like, and when they talk about going to college, you should have heard. Every student I asked a question to when I was teaching in Babylon, oh, I want to be a fashion designer. I want to be, this. I'm like, how does this help other people? Like, it was all for self, and all for just continuing the world to go into a deeper plunge of the lust of the eyes. And another, Generation Z, at the forefront. Don't let them fool you. This is not everyone. This is not everyone. Do not let them fool you. This is Generation Z tearing up their country.
The Islamic Republic of Iran is no stranger to popular uprisings. The regime cracked down on protests in 2009 and again 10 years later. But the demonstrations sweeping the country today are different. They're being led by young people. They're playing out both in the streets and online.
After 2 weeks of protests and brutal government backlash, Iranian activists, predominantly young women, remain defiant. The protests started earlier this year over
Predominantly women. Okay. They just like to throw men up in there. Oh, the men are being led by women. They love to incite some, anywhere they can get something, to be angry. to get people riled up. I used to sit there and say, I even said to my wife, sometimes we'd be looking at the news back in the day, and I'm like, what are women talking about? Like equal rights, right? When we were in Babylon, I just said, what are they talking about? Since I got out of the army, I haven't had one male supervisor. What are you talking about? what are you talking about? What are they talking about? Because every time I see a school principal, a supervisor, a director of a company, it's always a woman. I don't know what they're talking about. I really don't. Maybe in these countries, yes. But as far as more developed countries like US and Europe, like, what are you talking about? what are you talking about? So this is all about empowering the women. I'm going to show you.
Races, but erupted in mid-September after the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. She died in police custody after being arrested by Iran's morality police, who said she was wearing her hijab improperly. Since demonstrations began, more than 80 people have been killed. And protests have spread to other
There's a few older people. Okay.
Where an Iranian woman cut her hair, a popular act of resistance.
Today, men and women in Iran are united in wanting to destroy the Islamic Republic.
Now, you know what would be funny? Most High, forgive me, but you know what would be funny? If the Most High allowed them to cut their hair and it don't grow back. I'd be laughing so hard. That'd be like the Most High's irony. Like, who told you to do that? Right? I mean, it's not about, I mean, if it was about someone dying, it would be tears, right? Like, I'd feel bad. Like if I had the ability, like if I died and I had the ability to look and see how people responded to my death and they were burning things and all that, like I feel like, what? Like, don't use my name for this. I didn't even do this. Like, you notice how they don't say anything that this female does, what she did. You know, if she was a good person, they just protest. That's it.
Forever. When women are liberated, then the whole society will be liberated. Hello, TikTok. This isn't talking from Iran.
But with social media the preferred battlefield for this generation of protesters, even those Iranian women staying inside are finding ways to speak out.
Why are you cutting your hair? Your hair already short. I hope you're noticing something here. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but
from Iran.
But with social media,
all these females got short hair.
the preferred battlefield for this generation of protesters, even those Iranian women staying inside are finding ways to speak out.
To help us better understand Iran's Gen Z protesters, I'm joined by Holly Dagris. She's a fellow with the Atlantic Council, a Washington-based think tank, where she is also the editor of the Iran Source blog. Holly, thank you for joining us. You previously said that the 2009 Green Revolution, which was kind of called the social media revolution in Iran, is not really the best example of how social media revolutions in Iran can go, and that this one actually is much more deserving of that moniker. Why is that, and who are these protesters?
Well, these protesters are led by Iranian Gen Z, with women at the forefront. And what's been key here is that Iranian Gen Z, like Gen Z everywhere, is online. They're on social media, they're on TikTok, Instagram, and they use social media to express themselves and for their voices to be heard. And we've seen they've even used social media as a...
And then the number one generation was suicides. Let me not even say nothing.
Expressing themselves to lyric. Shervin Hajipur, a singer that's based in Iran, actually
can't even figure out their pronouns.
Iranians As part of
And
the
they want me to
celebrations,
take them seriously.
events included
Go on now.
Kiss of Love in the streets, dance in the streets, and for freedom. And unfortunately, Sherbine Ajipour was arrested by security forces.
And security forces are indeed cracking down very hard. They're using different censorship means to prevent Iranians from getting those messages out. Is that going to be something that impedes these protesters' progress or the ability to achieve their goals, or are they finding ways around the regime's crackdowns?
Well, since the 2009 post-election protests known as the Green Movement, the Islamic Republic has viewed internet and social media as a national security threat. So they've been cracking down hard on the internet over the years. And so with much of the world's most popular websites, 35% of the world's websites have been blocked by Iran. And Iranians use circumvention tools like virtual private networks to get by. Right now, we've been hearing from Iranians on the ground. They have to go through dozens of VPNs in order to get these messages out to the world.
It's truly incredible when you think of the efforts that they have to go to. I want to ask you also about the age difference between the regime, the clerics who run it, and these protesters. How is that generational gap playing into what we're seeing on the ground?
Well, Iranian Gen Z is under the age of 25. Much of the clerical establishment at the top are geriatric in their own words of Gen Z. They have nothing really in common with them. A lot of Gen Z, because they spend time online, do a lot of the same things that Gen Zers in the West do. They make deep fakes, they make memes. And so, for example, there's ageism memes about this cleric by the name of Ayatollah Janati. And Ayatollah Janati is 95 years old. He's the chairman of the Influential Guardian Council, which is a vetting body. And they actually refer to him as a dinosaur and a T-Rex. And so they actually show this in memes that they make. And that should just give you a sense of how disconnected they are with the government in the Islamic Republic.
Finally, Holly, I want to get your sense of what the Biden administration is doing. How do you think that they've responded?
Now they sitting there talking about how people are disconnected. In Babylon, so-called Black, Latinos, natives, they're disconnected. I don't hear no one talking about war for them. I mean, what's going on here? In Nigeria, Christians are disconnected from society, but well, we don't hear nothing about that, do we? You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, women and children, elderly are disconnected in Afghanistan. You don't hear nothing about that, do you? As long as they can back people up and get their energy into something, they're going to swing it.
These protests so far?
Well, they've been a little behind, but they finally caught up in May. It took a while for the Biden administration to react to protests back then. It took about 9 days for the U.S. State Department spokesperson, Ned Price, to actually issue a statement. Meanwhile, the State Department's Persian language Instagram account was posting about SoulCycle and CrossFit. And so they've definitely did a 180. We've now heard condemnation from all levels of government, and that's been very important. We've also seen that they've issued a general license that would be important for internet freedom. And that was something that has been called for years, even since the Trump administration. And now we're finally seeing that done. Whether it's going to really help with things on the ground, that's the question.
Holly Daggers with the Atlantic Council, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Gen Z, Gen Z, Gen Z. Gen Z. What do they want? I don't know. What do they want? I know what they want.
For nearly 3 weeks now, Iranians have marched in the streets to denounce the Islamic regime that's ruled for more than 40 years, sparked by the killing of a young woman named Masa Amini by the so-called morality police. This uprising, led by young women,
So-called morality police again, right?
over the last week, producer Zeba Barsi has been in contact with women both inside and outside Iran. Here are some of their stories. In an iconic moment last week, schoolgirls in Iran drove out a besieged, an Iranian paramilitary officer, calling him shameless.
Now, in the other videos, they told us that was the principal. I'm not buying this. I know they lying. I know they lying.
High school girls are off with their hijab, singing the protest anthem demanding freedom. Stunning images from across the country. Iranian youth angry and defiant despite the regime's brutal crackdown. Students from Sharif University, one of Iran's most respected, are sometimes called geniuses, chased by the likes of MIT and Stanford. Today, they're being chased by state security forces.
The government wants to control this protest, but I hope this time it will be different. And I deeply believe that God with us.
We spoke to several young women inside Iran who are protecting their identities for their own security.
It's a government problem. We want to be equal with men. We want to wear anything.
We want to be equal with men. We want to wear anything. So-called morality police. We want to wear anything. So-called morality police. We want to wear anything. So-called morality police. We just want to dress like the women in Babylon. Everybody want to be like people in Babylon. I have no idea why.
About life under this hardline regime.
We were on a journey, and in the road, the headscarf of my sister fell down. After 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes, my father received a message on his phone. If you repeat it and if you lose your headscarf, you have to pay a fine. And my father was so angry.
Another young woman spoke to us from her home in southeast Tehran. We've altered the audio to conceal her identity.
The situation is so ridiculously messed up that they are literally checking people's phones. The people that are passing by in the street could be arrested and prosecuted. I have had friends that were arrested.
I was in Ethiopia. They did this in Ethiopia years ago. I hear nothing about that then.
I have had friends that were threatened to stay silent or they will be prosecuted. I have had friends that had to literally run for their lives from the hands of the cops that right now are trying to suppress them. I want this government gone because I want to live like a normal human being with human rights, with the rights to express myself without the fear of literally being killed.
Now, no, but they want to be like men. They want to dress. They want to wear anything. They want to express themselves. This is Gen Z. They want to be like men. They want to wear anything they want. They want to express themselves. I hope you're right. You probably see where this is going.
All our interviews, there's one common message.
Women and men are being killed in the streets. Islamic Republic is not equal to Iran. We are Iran. They are Islamic Republic.
Human rights groups say that more than 100 protesters have been killed by security forces. Among them is 16-year-old Nika Shakarami. Her disturbing death created more fear and more outrage. In a heartbreaking message on Nika's birthday, her mother called her a martyr.
Today was your birthday, my love. I want to congratulate you on becoming a martyr, Nika. Congratulations on becoming a martyr.
Iranian women who've been forced into exile.
That looked like somebody's mama to you, of a dead daughter or a dead child. That don't look right to me. Come on now, actor.
Across the world by the regime's policies poured out their hearts to us in dozens of emails.
Every day it's like waking up to a battle no matter where we live. It's the 21st century, and other people don't understand the horror and instability Iranians face on a daily basis.
You have stolen our.
How about they talk about the Taliban that they didn't set up in Afghanistan, staying over there for years, right? 20 plus years, and then giving them all the military equipment, and now everyone's persecuted, right? That's that. Man.
For 4 decades. Return Iran to its people. We urge you, leave our people alone.
For as long as I remember, I wanted to be a boy. I even asked my mom to cut my hair.
Say what? You wanted to be a. Wait. We want to be like men. We want to wear anything we want. I wanted to be a boy. Okay, you get it, right? You get it. Okay.
Wanted to be a boy because girls are not allowed to sing, to dance, to laugh loudly, to be happy, to exist.
Now, if you believe that, you've been fooled. You think they're gonna sit here and put real emails up here? These ain't nobody's real emails. And if they are, they fabricate some of it, right? When they say they want to be a boy, no, it's not because girls are not allowed to sing. That girl was singing in the video. She was singing in public. What do you mean they wasn't allowed to sing? No, you wanted to be a boy.
I was walking in the streets of Tehran with my friends. I was arrested for wearing a V-neck t-shirt under my long coat. There was no way out.
Notice how they skipped the whole thing, right? Yeah, my foot.
We had all been abducted by the morality police.
The protests have sparked a global backlash, with millions standing in fierce support. Women leaders from every walk of life, from French actresses to Belgian lawmakers cutting their hair in solidarity. But for the Iranian diaspora, it's brought back haunting memories and sparked fear for family back home.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Those are fake tears. I don't see nothing. Do you?
Just remembering all the pain and
Oh, she's acting real good.
So sorry, give me a second. But it's still going on.
You look like you're living pretty good, right?
You know, very simple, easy things that is very normal in all parts of the world. It's a no-no thing in Iran for everyone, for young people, for kids. They become punished for it. It's so painful. And when I remember what we went through, and still I have 2 nieces, 2 young nieces in Iran. I feel like they have to go through what I went through. It's
Now, mind you, I know a crisis actor when I see one. They said she was in Iran, right? And you have a mural or a painting or something up here saying Tehran, capital, right? and then you're saying you have two nieces that's in Iran. Does that even make sense? Like if you felt that this country that you're in was so grievous, why would you have things like this? Yes. And then if you were in Iran, why would you have to say that your nieces are in Iran? Right? Because obviously we would think that they're there.
Very painful.
Good acting, though.
For nearly 3 weeks now, Iranians have marched in the streets.
So painful.
My, oh my. Most High. Get these people. They're lying over here.
Iranian women are fighting for their freedom in the face of radical Islam. It follows the death of 22-year-old Masha Amini, who was detained and punished for allegedly not wearing the proper Islamic hijab. Witnesses have reported that she was beaten in police custody. Police deny wrongdoing. Iranian authorities said she died from a heart attack, calling it an unfortunate incident. But this is a tweet that was posted after Masha's arrest. It reads here, in Iran, a 22-year-old woman named Masha Amini is in a coma for being violently arrested by the morality police for not wearing the proper hijab in Tehran. And as we see the photo picture here. Here to speak with us about the plight of Iranian women is Independent Women's Forum Senior Fellow, the author of In the Land of Invisible Women, Dr. Tanta Ahmed. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. Let's just start back with the case of Masha here. What does it tell you about the Iranian government that they're denying involvement in her death?
I mean, they are used to not being at all accountable to their public. The bodies and lives of women are the property of the state. A woman's life is expendable. What's not been mentioned in many news networks that I've been watching for the last few weeks is that the woman that was murdered at the hands of the state or in state custody, Basim Amini, is in fact Kurdish. And Iranian Kurds are amongst the most persecuted of Iran's population. And so and the Kurds are globally the largest group of people that are denied nationhood and have faced hundreds of years of persecution. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is I'm speaking to you from the capital of Saudi Arabia, the place I wrote about in my book over a decade ago. And Saudi Arabia is the heartbeat of Islam. And people here are watching these protests and cannot relate because so much transformation has happened in Saudi Arabia, where once I was regulated, I had to wear a veil, I was not allowed to fly. All those restrictions have gone away on the basis of moderate Islam.
Now, she said in Saudi, they cannot relate. Get this liar off the screen. Right? Get this liar off the screen. Then coming from going into Saudi, had to wear a head cover. Right? I was on the plane with my wife. Come on now. Can't relate? Please stop. They lying to people. And only people who have never been nowhere will believe it.
That the King of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the Secretary General of the Muslim World League that's invited me here, Dr. Mohammed Al Isa, has steered the kingdom towards.
Scratch his back, why don't you?
If you do not combat fundamentalist Islamist orthodoxy, and Saudi Arabia is what can happen if you allow
Scratch his back,
to blossom and eliminate
tickle his toes.
And Saudi Arabia, led by the young Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has been able to achieve that transition non-violently, without deaths, without massive revolutions, and with full support of its nation's population.
wait. Hold on. Let me see something. Hold that thought, because I think, brothers and sisters, I got something for y'all. I may. Most High willing is still in here. Let me see. Let me see. Bear with me. Bear with me. Thank you for your patience. Now, she said, what? Just an amazing country, huh?
It's really surreal to watch Iran while I'm here in Riyadh.
Well, we should point out that what's happening in Iran has taken place now for 3 weeks, again, following her death. Tell me about the consequences these women potentially face when they're out on the streets protesting.
I mean, Saudi Arabia, mass execution, 81 men. Shows they need to. Now, I did do some reading on this, and these individuals, 37 of them were men they suspected of committing a crime but had not 1 ounce of evidence. And they all cut their heads off. Huh? The other men, they did some petty crimes, which you could have forgave. Maybe they paid it back, and I think maybe 6 or 7, maybe less, murdered someone. But you mean to tell me? Now, I'm not believing BBC because everything is going to look at Iran, right? Notice how executions around the world. They ain't talking about Egypt. They ain't talking about Saudi, and I know the number's bigger than that for Saudi. I mean, they putting their own daughters up in political prisons. And how come they not including China, North Korea, Oman, and Vietnam? How come they not including China? Come on now. We know China got a number more than likely higher than Iran, if not close to it. What about North Korea? Come on now. You believe everything they tell you? My, oh my.
Where he mentioned that these protesters, and he related it to a Persian poet, were no more than the sound of a fly that could pretty much be swatted out and extinguished. His broadcasts have been hacked. I think they are underestimating the rage and fury of the Iranian people. My concern, and also the Wall Street Journal reported last night, here local time, that these protests have spread to oil-producing areas in southern Iran, and of course, energy is the lifeblood of Iran, even as it's sanctioned, and its energy-producing capabilities are also of great interest in the Biden administration that's very keen to lift American sanctions on Iran.
So why is she telling on the U.S. like that? She said, oh, all of a sudden now it's reached to the oil, and Biden administration, they want some oil, right?
I don't know that these protests are going to be quelled. My big fear is, unlike a very mature civil society in Saudi Arabia and a very widely recognized unifying leader as we have in King Salman.
Scratch his back, why don't you?
Salman here in the Saudi kingdom, there is not that kind of centralized leadership that could peacefully bring national protests to transition into some sort of calm step. And now we're going to have Iran has nuclear capabilities, has immense oil, and has extremism and fundamentalism built into its Shia clerical ulama, Muslim scholars, how that will ever be contained is going to be very difficult to see in a region where Syria is completely collapsed. Iran has been meddling in Syria and Iraq. Iran is running a war on Yemen. Iran is having a proxy war on Saudi Arabia.
Wait.
It's very
Iran having a war on Yemen. What does it say? Saudi warplanes carpet bomb Yemen with United States help. That's last year, 2021. Huh? They lying. Oh, those ships that was going to the peninsula there, right off the Somalian Djiboutian Peninsula and into Yemen. They were giving food and weapons to defend themselves. Hey, if you don't know the whole story, you're gonna end up what? Taking the side of someone who's lying. And that's even worse than
difficult to
assuming.
see where these protests are going to focus and what would happen if the protests in fact become larger than life. It's going to be extremely difficult for anyone inside or outside of Iran to manage.
Right, and again, just the risk that these women are willing to take, the morality police going around and reportedly beating women if they're not properly wearing their hijab.
So Emma, thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I want to say we greatly admire, and I as a Muslim woman greatly admire the bravery of these women and the sacrifices that they're making of their lives and of their families. And it's also the men supporting them. So yes, that's important to underline. And thank you for bringing that to my attention.
It's stood out to me.
If I can say one thing, Emma, Newsmax is watched here in Saudi Arabia. And my last appearance with you,
She's trying to get on another show.
watched at the echelons of Saudi Arabia, which has got the attention of some of the leaders here, which is why the Muslim World League invited me personally to come as a guest of His Excellency the Secretary General Muhammad Al Isa, who's the leading scholar.
He ain't no excellency. He's dirty.
Who's the leading Muslim scholar to have met the Pope, who's hosted rabbis and Christian priests here in the kingdom. That is not a cosmetic change in Saudi Arabia. That is a fundamental, profoundly spiritual change that's coming from the top and also the bottom of the society. So I really appreciate Newsmax giving us a chance to give you a much deeper view of Saudi Arabia and the region than most networks.
Well, we appreciate having viewers tuning in from all over the world. And of course, we continue to follow the very latest developments out of Saudi Arabia. Major development there from the U.S. Senator Pablo Menendez earlier today regarding cooperation with them. We covered that earlier on our network as well. Dr. Kanta Ahmed, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate these conversations as always.
Real pleasure. Absolutely.
Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. Getting into some scripture. Let's go. Galatians 5. In fact, hold that. Okay, we're gonna hold that. You can flip to it, but just hold it. We got a few more things to share. I'm bringing it all out.
I was so angry. I was really sad. I was
They're cutting their hair.
has to know what is going on right now. This is not just a simple thing that we can just get away with and like, live our life.
Nobody's gonna advocate for us like we are. I feel like a moral responsibility, especially like when it comes to my people. I keep advocating for them, like posting every single day, trying to share things I can. Even though I don't have a big account, like it's potential for a domino effect. But okay, I'm gonna share something and somebody else will and just for that month.
Thousands are taking to the streets in anti-government protests following the death of a 22-year-old woman who was in police custody, arrested by Tehran's morality police for not wearing her headscarf correctly.
Iranian officials saying she suffered a heart attack from a previous health condition. But Amini's father calling that a lie, saying she had no prior health issues and was killed at the hands of police.
The Iranian government is cracking down, arresting activists and students following 8 days of the largest anti-government demonstrations the country has seen in years.
So I heard that women are cutting their hair. This is one of the things that I can do. I'm a public figure and there are so many people who follow me. It might be one of the reasons that the world can hear us.
You see like the pain in their eyes and like the frustration. It's an everyday thing. It's nothing to worry about ever going on the door, like who's gonna harass you. I just ended up seeing that video and then I was like, all right, like it's just time. This is just me cutting my hair like in solidarity, like just trying to spread awareness.
I leave for these people. Like I might not be in the country present, but I hear them and I want to like be their voice. Mahsa Amini, who was killed by a morality police, she was Kurdish. Whenever they want to like say something is true, they say, I swear to my mom's hair. So it's a huge thing for them. And also because she was killed because of her hijab and because her hair was out, they put it together and that's how this came out, I think.
I think.
As horrible as it sounds, it's like stuff like this happens all the time and it's never been taken seriously by the Western media. Like the whole point of this is to like spread awareness. They have no access to the resources in order to be able to like share this information.
And this is not a situation that we should waste time. They do not.
How they don't got resources? People in the Western countries, they always say someone's country is dingy. Oh, they don't have resources. You even been to the Middle East? I mean, I've seen places that will make New York look like nothing. I mean, come on. I mean, seriously? Like, have you been to Qatar? Oh, man. You want to know somewhere that look better than the U.S.? Go to Qatar. My goodness. Come on. These people will say they don't have resources. Get out of here. They do. How do you think they got all the videos? Right? How do you think they get all those videos the day or the day after it happens? And we can thank Elon Musk for that. Starlink.
Access to the internet. They do not have any access to WhatsApp. They do not have any access to Instagram. I have so many friends that they have family in there. They do not know where they are.
The reason that everybody keeps saying like VR boy, because that's like the most consistent thing that I see like Iranians like commenting. They can maybe potentially only have enough like internet in order to post like a comment. And so they're really counting on us to like do what we can.
They need help. They're getting killed.
Bam! I hope you caught it. Iran, Afghanistan, human rights, LGBTQI plus rights. Now, look at the bottom. It says women, life, freedom. I want you to understand when you see this on the news, women, life, freedom. It's a Kurdish saying, right? The Kurdish saying goes, women, life, liberty. But this saying has been hijacked by the alphabet community that is trying to demoralize their nation. You didn't think you was gonna see that there, did you? And why are they talking about why are they talking about Afghanistan? Oh wait, let's see. Women, life, freedom. On September 20th, the slogan has been chanted in Afghanistan women protest for Iran. Now, this is used in Turkey. And they're just putting it here that it's used for this protest, but it's been used for a while. Okay. It says the origin of the slogan can be traced to the Kurdish freedom movement in the late 20th century. The first time that slogan was used by members of the Kurdish women's movement, a part of the Kurdish freedom movement, which was founded on grassroots activism in response to persecution of governments of Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. So this is not a slogan for Iran. This is a slogan for persecution in the what we would call the Mediterranean, or some would call the Levant areas. Okay, what kind of persecution? You may say it's the LGBT. They want to be those individuals because they hung their advocates. Okay, they hung them because they just want to make sure my hair, my choice, my body, my choice. Sound familiar? This is what they're not showing you. And the girls, this is her middle name, Masa. Her name is Zina Masa Amini. Anyone know? I did a little research. I think the Zina means prostitution. Now, I don't know if that's her lifestyle, but I'm curious as to why you would name your child that. Something doesn't seem right. It says Iran's Amani protests are LGBTQ fight too. Be the unheard voice of Iranian queer community. Spread our voices, spread out stories, and acknowledge our existence and resistance in Iran. That's October 4th, 2022. So you're sitting there thinking that this is about this woman. No, this is about these people. This is what they want. This is what they want. This is what they want. Sick. It's sick. It's sick.
اصلا بچگی این احساس که وجودم رو نه شما همه به خودتون می‌زنید همه از یه جا اومدید به یه جا هیچ تفاوتی با هم ندارید
We will not all go to the same place. I can assure you.
جمله خوشبختانه و همین جمله متاسفانه ازدواج کردن و بکار بردن حالا برگشتی بعد 3 سال کی به کی میگه بی‌معرفت خدای هممون یکیه ما دیگه خدای
No.
به وجود نیاورده ما تو طبیعت هستیم
No.
بزرگترین ترسم اینه که چیزایی که من تجربه کردم دخترم می‌پسرم تجربه کنم واقعا یه سری چیزا خیلی سخته سنگ بیان کردنش یه سری چون ما متاسفانه هر حرف میزنیم پشت سرش یه حرف دیگه میاد تو اگر اینجوری هستی چرا اونقدر چراهایی که جوابشون خیلی آسونه ولی واقعا نمیشه بعضی چیزا تو حریم شخصی آدمان تا واقعا نمیتونن بیان کنن
Sick. Sick. Those two individuals were put to death, by the way. Look at this. LGBTQ's case for supporting the 2022 revolution in Iran. That's October 11th. This is Gen Z. This is Gen Z. Because the Islamic Republic Khomeini called for the extermination of all gays. I'm not going to say nothing because I don't want YouTube or anyone else to look at me as hate speech, but you know we follow the Bible. We know we down with the Most High's words. That's just what it is. Right? This is what they want. And this is a women life freedom is a feminist revolution. Key word. Feminist revolution, all about inclusion. Feminist revolution for inclusion. What kind of inclusion? They want to be boys. They want to be boys. I'm not okay with this.
I think I'm just always related, like, back to home. Like, I just think about all the people in my family, like, all the women that have to deal with this. I'll feel guilty, like, doing normal thing, taking a break. Because, like, they can't take a break. They're in it all the time.
People in Iran are protesting, and it's not because of they want to have hijab. It's really more than that.
This isn't, like, just, like, a feminism issue. This isn't just, like, an LGBTQ plus issue. This is also just a financial issue, like economic stress.
It's because of everything that has been going on over the past 43 years since the revolution. They only want their basic human rights. That's one of the main things that they want, basic human rights.
They want human rights to be confused. So if you thought anything was different, Minister Yeshua is teaching you. Don't believe what they telling you. I'm going to get it straight from the source. Straight from the source. Thank you for your patience on that brief hold. All right.
Now it's been 1 month since 22-year-old Mahsa Amini was detained by Iran's morality police for improperly wearing her hijab. Since her death in police custody 3 days later, Iranians have been taken to the streets. At first, demonstrations led mainly by women vented their anger towards the country's morality police, but they quickly morphed into something much larger. In recent weeks, Iranians of all ages, ethnic groups, and socio-economic backgrounds have been calling for the Islamic Republic to go. We can now bring in France 24's international press commentator, Douglas Herder. Doug, great to see you as always. Let's talk about these protests, because despite the crackdowns, they have continued. Just how significant are they?
Extremely, and I think you hit on it really in your introduction here. It's the broad-based nature, extraordinarily broad-based. Yes, this is a women-led movement. That makes it obviously very significant in the context of Iran's modern history, going back to the Islamic Revolution in 1979. But what's amazing here is how it's across swathes of society. It's drawn in the solidarity that different sectors, often that are not obviously linked or connected like dots. It has brought in now workers in the past few days, especially workers in the vital oil and energy sectors. What's interesting about that is obviously mostly men in those sectors, and they played a very vital role in the original Islamic Revolution that brought down the Shah in the late 70s. So the fact they're in there is very significant. Lawyers and doctors, but also men who feel that by jeopardizing and repressing women and their rights, you're really taking aim at the entire society. This idea that if women aren't free, no one is free in society. That's what's significant here, and it cuts across geography. We see.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Everyone should be free. But to say that, that's, I mean, do you know of the things that happen in Babylon? I mean, too much freedom will get you looking ashamed and have you counted as a dog, just as the Bible says in the book of Ecclesiasticus. I mean, what do they want to do? OnlyFans? That's the freedom they want. They want strip clubs and all kinds of, doing this and that. Like, that's what they want.
All across Iran, even if certain regions, especially Balochistan, which is close to the border of Pakistan, where some of the minorities in Iran are based in, they have been really targeted by the security police, and a lot of the deaths as a result of these protests have occurred in those regions. But we've really seen across a broad geographic swathe all over the country, all age groups, different sectors, different professional groups, different socioeconomic classes. It began, yes, as outrage over the strict enforcement of Islamic dress code for women, but this has, as you said, morphed into something bigger, much broader. Many of these protesters want nothing short of the overthrow of this religious theocracy, this religious conservative regime.
Now, these protests.
And there you go. They after conservative. I told you, they gonna come, right? They gonna come. Look what they doing to the world, brothers and sisters. 2 Ezra 16. Look what they doing to the world. How do you get a world where it says, "For behold, the burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you, and they shall take away a certain of you and feed you, being idle with things offered unto idols"? How do you get to, "For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord"? How do you get to that point? You target them by saying they're oppressing the rest of the people. By saying the problem is because they're religious. The problem is because they're conservative. Right? It's no different from in Babylon when we saw they were talking about my body, my choice, and the Supreme Court shut down the abortion to some extent. And they was going all crazy. You don't understand me. We're being oppressed and we've been fighting for this for 50 years. They're doing the same thing over there in Iran. Same thing. But this is how you get it. You have such a demoralized world to the point where saving life or morality is looked at as the number one enemy. This is how they're going to come after us by and what's crazy is they were going wild for killing children, and now it seems like they're going wild over head cover. They're going wild over morality. But as we know, I shared it with y'all, this has nothing to do with a head cover. All right?
Parted against the morality police who are back. Take a look. Yeah. Well, we have something. What you're seeing there, that is Tehran, and even though our little caption is across the vital part, yeah, this was Delano, an activist group called 1500 Tasfir. Tasfir is sort of like a report, an article, document. They're a well-known, very reliable activist group in Iran. They posted this actually yesterday on the 12th. And it shows morality police, the same morality police who arrested the young Kurdish Iranian woman and touched off these protests. She died in police custody. Those same police, as if nothing ever happened, are back out there on the beat, enforcing the morality codes like never before. What's interesting here is the regime officially is still sounding an extremely brutal note, lashing out, accusing foreigners of instigating these protests, i.e. the US and Israel fomenting this revolution, this counter-revolution, Blitz calling these riots, saying that these people are simply are manipulated by outsiders.
Now, can I ask you a question? The devil is a hypocrite. Once again, I don't side with any nation, especially when they're not with the Most High, but when Iran does it and says there's interference, it's claimed to be said that they're just so evil, right? And they're not taking responsibility. How dare they blame others, right? Now, when Trump won the first election in Babylon, all the people were saying Russia, right? They were doing all the investigations, right? Even about the investigations about that little insurrection, that little planned insurrection they did on January 6th. But if it's them, oh, someone else did it. But if it's someone else, oh, they're such a bad leader. They need to be removed. The devil is the greatest hypocrite.
Interesting is we're beginning to see some cracks. We've heard reports earlier this week. A very conservative, prominent conservative politician, we had a former parliamentary speaker, Ali Larijani. He actually gave a long interview in which he said that there should be a rethink of the enforcement of this compulsory hijab law, the hijab being the head covering that Muslim women often in many countries are told to wear around their necks and their heads and parts of their chests, some cases even their faces visible. And also showing the liar, suggesting that this has deep political roots, these protests, and economic hardship and political and social grievances, and it's not, as Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, has suggested, solely the result of foreigners, Israel and the U.S. instigating these people. They held that there were deep political roots here. So a few cracks in the edifice, even a few conservative publications are beginning to suggest that you need to take a closer, harder look at have legitimate grievances of a younger generation of Iranians who are night and day when it comes to this older, very arch-conservative religious leadership.
I mean, it's amazing. We've seen like really young girls protesting. But let's talk about the international community and what it has done so far.
Well, according to a lot of the Iranians looking in, both inside and outside, not enough. They have not taken enough concrete actions. The European Union is in the process of, is in the midst of trying to reach a consensus on imposing sanctions against the Iranian leaders that they see as being responsible for the repression against the women, the morality police and their proxies. The foreign ministers in the European Union will be meeting next Monday in Luxembourg, and it's thought that at that point they will, acid freezes, travel bans against these key targeted personalities. Let's note that the UK and the US, as well as Canada, have already enacted their own sanctions and bans, targeted bans against these people. But like I said, a lot of it hasn't come fast enough. Emmanuel Macron, in an interview last night on the French public broadcaster, basically said that the French people stand in solidarity with the Iranian people. But once again, the words are not enough for many Iranians. Would like to see concrete actions. I say this is a historic juncture in Iran's history. Where is the West? What are they doing? Why are they standing by their principles? Are they putting their actions behind their words?
Exactly, because we know that the European Union can act fast when it wants to. We see how they slapped those sanctions on Russia in the span of 1 weekend after the war started. Thank you very much for that, Doc. That was covered there.
Everything's leading the war. Can you not see? Everything's leading the war, brothers and sisters. Wake up. Wake up. Everything's leading the war.
Over the last 4 weeks, widespread strikes and heated protests have rocked Iran. The authorities have cracked down hard. Rights groups say more than 200 people have been killed in clashes with police, and thousands have been detained. The unrest started when a young woman died while in the custody of the morality police. That young woman was 22-year-old Gina Mahsa Amini from Iran's Kurdish region. She was arrested for not complying with the strict rules on wearing a headscarf. Now she's become the face of the protest movement that's seen thousands of women take to the streets. Women have been at the forefront of the anti-government protests, rejecting the repressive policies of Iran's hardline Islamic leadership. And despite police shooting live rounds at them, the protests have only grown in size and in passion.
This is what outrage looks like in Iran. People who feel they have nothing left to lose, daring imprisonment or worse. Many disagree strongly with the government's rules on dress for women, and that someone had to die for breaking them.
In my opinion, they should remove the hijab altogether. Anyone who likes it can wear it, and anyone who doesn't need to.
Iran is a religious state, and the official interpretation of Shia Islam relies on a fundamentalist view of women's and men's roles. Women are required to dress modestly, and that includes covering their hair at all times in public. This is a core value of Iranian law since the revolution in 1979. Child custody and divorce settlements favor men, who can also prohibit their wives from working in certain professions. Women are not allowed to leave the country without their husband's permission. Women receive far less inheritance when a parent dies than do their brothers, and they face discrimination in inheriting their husband's estates as well. The Iranian government does not seem poised to change discriminatory laws. Rather, the senior mullahs have blamed the West for the protest movement. But that hasn't stopped the widespread chants, "Woman, life, freedom," that have been ringing out across the country.
And joining me in the studio now is the W's correspondent, Teresa Tropper, who's traveled to Iran and reported from Iran extensively. Teresa, are we getting to know everything that is currently happening in Iran?
No, I'm sure we're not, because taking pictures or filming, even if it's only with a smartphone, is a huge risk for anyone in Iran at the moment. If you're caught doing that in a situation like this one, you'll be beaten and jailed or worse. And then even if you've done so, publishing it is also a challenge, because sending it to somebody or uploading it on social media is also dangerous. And it's hard given the fact that there are still internet shutdowns all over the country, especially, for example, in Iran's Kurdish regions, which have turned into a major protest hub in the last couple of weeks. And then even if you've achieved all of that, it has to make its way into international news coverage. And that's also not always happening because it's hard to verify these videos and there are no correspondents on the ground. So I'm pretty sure we haven't seen the full scale of both the protests and the crackdown on them.
Teresa, even if women are largely leading these anti-government protests, men have also joined in. Does that surprise you?
No, not really, because the hijab and the discrimination against women in general is not the only reason why Iranians, and especially young Iranians, have had enough of the Islamic Republic. It's a lack of human rights in general. And most people protesting now were born long after the revolution in 1979. And they can see on social media how people their age live in other areas of the world, and they want the same thing for themselves. So they don't want to be denied freedoms and opportunities by the old men that are ruling them at the moment, especially if you consider the fact that the children and grandchildren of these old men themselves mostly live in the West. So they enjoy the freedoms Iranians in Iran cannot. And that's why not only men, but also other groups have joined the protests. Iran's minorities, for example, lawyers, workers, many groups. And that's why protesters now feel that this time it could work out and they could succeed.
Now, European foreign ministers are expected to approve a new set of sanctions against Iran on Monday. Do you think the EU has been too soft so far?
Well, apart from condemnation and symbolic moral support, so far we haven't seen much from the European Union, like cutting your hair in public, for example. And that's also true for Germany.
There's no big demos in the streets of Berlin, for example.
And if so, it was mostly Iranians living in exile protesting and not people from Germany or European countries mostly. And I'm sure protesters will be watching closely what kind of sanctions the European Union will agree on. If it's sanctions that actually target and hit the people in power who are responsible for the human rights violations, or if it's ordinary Iranians again who has mostly been paying the price for sanctions against Iran in the past.
Teresa, thank you very much.
Few more brothers and sisters, hang with me.
The death toll from a fire at Tehran's notoriously brutal Aviv prison, known for housing political prisoners, has now risen to 8. There are reports guards fired tear gas during the chaos, forcing inmates to break windows to breathe. This comes 1 month into protest over the death of, in police custody, of 22-year-old Masa Amini, detained for allegedly not wearing her head covering properly. The regime's crackdown on demonstrators has been especially brutal on the Kurdish community. CNN's chief international investigative correspondent, Nima al-Bagher, reports that many women are now fleeing to Iraq and joining armed opposition groups to support protesters inside Iran. We want to warn our viewers, this report contains graphic video.
In a remote area in northern Iraq's Kurdish region, an all-female fighting unit belonging to the armed Kurdish Iranian opposition party, PAK, continues to train. These women have been pulled back from the front line. For the last 3 weeks, the area they patrolled in the northeast of Iraq has been hit by shells sent from across the border by Iran. This unit is part of a larger fighting force. For every single one of these women, this war is personal. Rezan, not her real name, crossed the border from Iran with the help of smugglers just over a week ago. The city of Sanandaj, which she calls home, is in Iran's Kurdish majority western region, and in recent weeks has been likened to a war zone, according to its residents, as protests have erupted here and across Iran after the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian. Rezan, just a teenager, joined these protests.
We were treating casualties, but we were also, like most people, participating in the revolution, in the uprising. Everyone who suffered from the oppression of the Iranian regime came down to the streets and market and defied the government. I was also participating, and I had no fear of death.
Rezan says that while she was dragged by her uncovered hair, she passed prone, lifeless bodies. And even after she left, she says she's continued to receive information about people she knows who have died. Like this man, Yahya Rahimi, a newly married 27-year-old, murdered by Iranian regime forces for sounding his horn in solidarity with protesters. What is happening with your family?
My family told them that no matter how many members of my family they arrest, and for as long as they oppress my people, I will not surrender to the invading Iranian government. We are ready to die.
When Kurdish Iranian Mahsa Amini died in police custody, her name became a symbol of the oppression of women across Iran. But Mahsa is not her true name. Her Kurdish name is Jine, a name Iranian authorities barred her family, like many other ethnic minority groups, from using. The regime only legally registers Persian names. Yet, in her last recorded moments, Jine resorted to begging her captors in her Kurdish mother tongue, entreaties which were ignored, reinforcing the fears of Iran's Kurdish minority. Iran's reach to oppress the protest within its borders is stretching far beyond that. Over the last few weeks, Iranian missiles have fallen into the Kurdish region of Iraq almost every day. The onslaught is relentless. This map shows where Iranian strikes have hit, killing at least 18 and injuring at least 63 to date. This video, filmed by a local television channel, shows the moment just after an Iranian drone and several missiles struck one of the Kurdish Iranian opposition party bases, killing 8 soldiers and injuring more. On a day on which 70 missiles, Kurdish authorities say, rained down in the space of just 4 hours. This base, only 2 years ago, was on the front line in the fight against ISIS after PAC received US training. It isn't far from US Central Command, CENTCOM forces. Just one day after the attack on the PAC base, CENTCOM shot down another Iranian drone.
Did you catch that? These Kurdish women were trained by US Special Forces. And you wonder why Iran does not like these people. They look at them as a militarized destabilization unit. Now, and what you're not knowing is these are the same women who were more manly, or I can't say more manly, but they took up arms, and as the men were being executed in Syria, they were fighting and they pummeled ISIS.
They say, as a threat to CENTCOM forces stationed in the area. And as the US anti-ISIS presence in Iraq is set to continue, so is the threat Iran poses. These female fighters have vowed to fight until there is a regime change in Iran. They say they share Jine's pain. Called by a name forced on her by a repressive regime, all of them have a Kurdish name just like her, not spoken outside their homes. All of them say it's hard to imagine going back to how life was before.
Those who've made it here to Iraq say they consider themselves the lucky ones, despite having to circumnavigate a militarized response and live fire from regime forces just to get here with their lives. Despite feeling lucky, they say they carry with them the guilt at leaving behind their families inside Iraq.
You know, Bader, excellent reporting. Stay safe over there. Thank you very, very much.
So, all around, brothers and sisters, all around. I'm just about finished. You know, I'm gonna end it with a punch.
To understand what is happening in Iran today, we need to go back more than 100 years to when Englishman William Darcy first discovered oil in what was then known as Persia. It would become a watershed moment in the country's history. The discovery heightened British interest and eventually led to the establishment of a company called the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, an early branch of today's British Petroleum Company, otherwise known as BP. The UK government later became the majority shareholder and eventually controlled much of Iran's vast oil wealth. These resources became only more vital after the Second World War, with the UK's power and influence greatly diminished. Although Iran was not a colony or under the direct control of a foreign power, the UK's control over the nation's oil caused deep resentment amongst the Iranian people. When the popularly elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, moved to nationalise the country's oil assets in 1951, the United Kingdom desperately turned to the US for help. They also blocked Iranian ports and imposed crippling economic sanctions. Then, in 1953, everything changed.
These Iranians pulled down the Shah's statue and sent him into exile. Only for a week, assisted by the American Central Intelligence Agency, the Shah returned and re-established his power.
The CIA intervened to overthrow the government of Mohammad Mossadegh. He was later put on trial and remained under house arrest.
Bingo! The CIA was involved.
To his death in 1967. This early example of US interference in Iran's affairs still reverberates today.
The protests in Iran intensifying on their sixth day. Officials say 3 people, including a member of the security forces, were killed Tuesday, bringing the death toll to 7 since Saturday. Anger sweeping across the country following the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died in Tehran last week after being taken into custody by the morality police for, quote, unsuitable attire. Authorities deemed that the pants she was wearing under her compulsory loose-fitting gown to be too tight. Police said she died Friday after falling ill and slipping into a coma as she waited with other women held by the morality police.
I'm going to save this part for last. So you see, there's always been something, right? There's always been something. Now check out what this man, Rudy Giuliani, said. And he said this on numerous occasions. I wonder if this is playing out now.
They're going to be overthrown. The people of Iran obviously have now had enough. The sanctions are working. The currency is going to nothing. They're where Russia was. They're where Poland was. We see signs of young men and women saying, give me some food. We saw a sign of a man trying to sell his internal organs for $500 American, probably a fortune in Iran today. This is truly pitiful. These are the kinds of conditions that lead to successful revolution, and God willing, non-violent revolution.
No. So all of this is from what?
They're going to be overthrown. The people of Iran obviously have now had enough. They're going to be overthrown. They're going to be overthrown. They're going to be overthrown.
They will be overthrown. This is their revolution. This is planned. Okay. And this leads to war and bloodshed. Now, to end it off, along with the scriptures, we finish this video.
I'm going to take you back in time, 1400 years, to the city of Medina, Saudi Arabia, to a time when Prophet Muhammad was given the task of finding a solution to women in the city being attacked and molested. The situation was this. It was around the year 600 AD, long before the modern convenience of plumbing. And when a woman awoke in the middle of the night with the urge to relieve herself, she would have to walk out past the outskirts of the city and into the wild by herself for privacy. Believe it or not, a group of men actually began to see an opportunity in women's nightly treks and started to linger at the outskirts of the city, their identities hidden in the dark, watching. If a woman walked by and she happened to be wearing a jilbab, which was a garment like a coat, the men knew to leave her alone. A jilbab of centuries ago was a status symbol with a Burberry trench or Chanel jacket. It announced that the woman was free, and a free woman was protected by her clan. She would have no problem speaking out against the attacker and identifying him. But if the woman walking out at night wasn't wearing a jilbab, if she happened to be dressed a bit more freely, then the men knew she was a slave, and they attacked her. Concerned members of the community brought the situation to the prophet, and like so many other social, political, and familial issues that Muhammad faced during his prophethood, he turned this particular matter over to God. And a verse was revealed for the Quran, the Muslim holy book. O Prophet, it reads, tell your wives, your daughters, and the women of the believers to draw upon themselves their garments. This is better so that they not be known and molested. Basically, the verse advises that all women dress similarly so that they can't be picked out from one another, zeroed in on, and attacked. Now, on the surface, this may seem like a relatively easy solution to the problem, but it turns out it wasn't. The early Muslim community was tribal and so deeply entrenched in social status, and the idea that a slave was like a free woman, it was almost insulting. In the end, the early Muslim scholars ruled that a woman's way of dress should be based on two considerations: a woman's function in society, her role, what we might consider her job, and the society's specific customs. After all, haven't we all come to assume that a Muslim woman must veil? That veiling is a requirement of her faith. There's even a term that we've all come to associate with the Muslim woman's veil, an Arabic term. We've all heard used, whether or not we've been aware of it. Hijab. So maybe I missed it. Maybe the requirement that a woman veil is in a different part of the Quran. For those of you who don't know, the Quran consists of 114 chapters. Each chapter is written out in verses like poetry. There are more than 6,000 verses in the Quran. Of the 6,000 plus verses, 3 refer to how a woman should dress. The first is the verse I've already told you about. The second is a verse that directly speaks to the prophet's wives, asking that they begin to dress a bit more modestly because of their role, their function in society as his wives. And the third verse is similar to the first in that it was revealed in direct response to a historical situation. Early records show that the custom, the fashion during the pre-Islamic era was for women to wear a scarf on the head called a himar, which would be tucked behind the ears and allowed to flow behind the back. In the front, a woman wore a tight vest or a bodice, which she left open, exposing her breasts, sort of like the images you see in Game of Thrones. When Islam spread through the Arabian Peninsula, a verse was sent down asking that women use this scarf or any other garment to cover the breasts. And that's it. That's basically all there is in the Quran concerning how a woman should dress. Turns out, God doesn't give a bullet point of all the parts on a woman's body that he wants hidden from view. And in fact, It might be argued, and it is argued. Not stress enough that it is argued by many Muslim scholars that the reason these verses were left intentionally vague is so that a woman could choose for herself how to dress according to her specific culture and the progression of time. And that term hijab, guess what? It's not in any of these three verses. In fact, it's nowhere in the Quran directly meaning a woman's veil. That's not to say that the word doesn't appear in the Quran, because it does appear. But when it appears, it's actually used correctly to mean barrier or divide, such as the barrier or divide that exists between us humans and the divine, or between believers and non-believers, or it means a barrier like a physical screen that men during Muhammad's time were asked to stand behind when speaking to his wives, or it means the seclusion, the separation that Mary sought when she was giving birth to Jesus. That separation and seclusion, that means hijab. That physical screen, that means hijab. That barrier, that divide, that means hijab. Hijab doesn't mean a woman's veil.
Now, I wanted to leave that video. Of course, I'm going to finish it with a few scriptures. But I wanted to leave it with that video because, you know, apparently this has been a debated topic about a woman's head cover. And, you know, even though this woman was advocating that you shouldn't wear head coverings, right? I thought it was a great thing that she actually contradicted herself, saying that the covering was used to cover a woman's body so people, evildoers, wouldn't attract to hurt the woman. What's wrong with that? That's actually a great thing. And you know, they're never finding it in the Quran, because if you speak to any imam who's willing to speak with you, I have done so in the Middle East, and even those who used to be devout Muslims, they'll sit there and tell you that they first are told to read the Bible before they read the Quran. So that head covering or that hijab that they're using for women is really in reference to the Bible and the women having head coverings. Okay. So all in all, though, I said, what's wrong with wanting to identify yourself as someone who doesn't want to be taken advantage of, you know? I mean, isn't it, you know, a lot of people are talking about getting raped and how men look at them as a meat market and different things, right? I mean, is it, and I'm posing just a question, right? But something like a rhetorical, obviously, but why is it that in culture, in the world, it's okay to blame a man? Yes. But why is it also in the worldly culture that it is considered a shame for a woman to feel comfortable covered? Why is that? Without showing extra curves or extra part of their chest, or why is that? And is that normal? I mean, I think we really, as believers, and even newcomers as well. We really have to start thinking about how to get closer and get back to how our forefathers and foremothers were, right? Modesty across the board altogether. Once again, I told you and I shared with you more than enough that this has nothing to do with a hijab or a veil or a head covering. This has all to do with them coming after conservative religions, imposing the LGBT, and just demoralizing more of a society. All right, let's get into it. Galatians chapter 5, verse 16 through 25 reads, "This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lavishness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murderers, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and the lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit." So, at the same time, you know, we are walking, right? And we should crucify ourselves in the flesh and walk as Christ. Okay. Men to be covered, right, in modesty. Women, children to be covered in modesty, right? It really doesn't matter the age whatsoever. Everyone should be modest, right? Everyone should want to, if the Most High called you and said, stand, and he came down to talk to you, you should be, in modest clothing, right? So why aren't we like that all the time when he is present all the time? He's always looking, right? In this lesson, you saw the works of the flesh being manifested: seditions, hatred, strife, uncleanness. You saw these things. You saw these things. And it's unfortunate, but I wanted to share that these spirits are out here, brothers and sisters, and they are riling up everything. They know what time it is. But do you? Ecclesiasticus 6:4 reads, "A wicked soul shall destroy him that hath it, and shall make him to be laughed to scorn of his enemies." And we see it's a shame what they're doing. Iran is a beautiful country. It's a shame what they're doing. Wicked soul, having that evil inside of them, is destroying them and making them look foolish. You even had kindergartners and first and second graders. I had a video congregant share with me. You have videos of second and third graders defying school. Like, it looks foolish. You're supposed to be learning. If the kids are out of school, who's teaching them? What are they going to learn, right? How are they going to get close to the Most High? Or they just want to live life and live reckless. They don't want the Most High. It's sad. But mark my words, at the end of all this, they're going to regret all of this. Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 1, verse 22, it says, a furious man cannot be justified, for the sway of his fury shall be his destruction. And notice, the sway of the protest, it went straight from a woman's head covering and a possible death to the oil industry and the LGBT community and women's rights. Now, yes, everyone should have rights. But like I shared in the first few lessons, what happened to that woman, that young lady who was forced to marry her cousin and then beheaded? What happened? What happened to that? Don't be swayed by emotions, brothers and sisters. You will never be justified by emotions. You will never be justified by anger. Ecclesiasticus 10 and 18 reads, pride was not made for men, nor furious anger for them that are born of a woman. So man and woman were not born to have pride or the LGBTQ pride. Nor were we created to have anger. We were created to love the Most High, our Creator. And we were created to love one another all over the world as brothers and sisters in Christ. That's what we were created for. But pride kills, and it destroys every relationship and every ounce of morality within the bones and soul. Ecclesiasticus 25 and 19 reads, all wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. Let the portion of a sinner fall upon her. And I say this, I wanted to include this because look at what they're saying. All the women are leading this. They're cutting their hair. They don't know why they're doing this. Getting all emotional. I understand someone died, but the minute you remove the person and put another agenda in it, this is evil. And we saw what? What did you see? No matter what, there was only one man at the head of talking about Iran. Other than that, it was all females. Yes, they're all leading this charge. They're going to be the ones to overthrow their country. Mark my words. And then their country is going to have even greater issues than what it does now. They're worried about the Revolutionary Guard. You better be worried about death and judgment from the Most High. Because when you're dead, there's no more coming back. And this is all going to lead to war. We'll sit there and say, you're going to drop bombs, you're going to go to war over LGBT rights? Or better yet, even if it was about a hijab, you're going to go to war and kill hundreds of thousands, close to millions of people over a piece of fabric? Doesn't make sense. If the person was innocent, let them rest in peace. Proverbs 21:19 reads, "It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman." And like I said in the beginning, I even said about the abortion, they are using women to destroy and to bring up, pretty much conjure up more demons, right? Going along with Genesis 3, how they hate and despise the woman. This is where it's going. The world needs, just like the Most High is demanding righteous men to stand up for him at the end, the world needs righteous women to stand up as well and say, where's those Deborahs? Where's those Judas? Where's those Esthers? Where's those Annas? Okay? Where's the Sarahs? Where are they? Everyone always talking about how men, we should lead the front. Yes, we should. That is true. But now it's time. It's out of control with the music and the clothes and all the things that they have promoting for women, and how the women are behind the Black Lives Matter, the LGBT, the feminism, the destroying of the nuclear families, the abortion, my body, my choice, all of this. Like, it's sad to see that the women can't see that Satan is after you, and he only is wanting to draw you in to devour you. And he's devoured so many. Sad to say. And Ecclesiasticus 25:24 reads, "Out of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die." And I'm going to leave it at this, because I'm not saying all women are evil, but I felt like this was going to be a perfect scripture for what's happening in Iran. They're saying it's all led by women, right? These things that's happening, they have to have consequences, right? Whether it's through a foreign country dropping bombs, or whether it's through their leader imposing more restrictions and putting people in jail or killing them. Like, no one thought that this was going to have a repercussion. And this is why I say this is a prime example. We came through her, and we all will die. Meaning, hey, look at what is happening. Look at what is happening. Brothers and sisters, I'm gonna end it with one verse. I want to end it with something. Always. This is one. One moment, please. I apologize. I want to end it with one particular scripture. And I'll pass it to you several times. I'll end it with this, brothers and sisters. Second Ezra 14 and 13. Now therefore set thine house in order and reprove thy people. Comfort such as them as be in trouble. And now renounce corruption and let go from thee mortal thoughts and cast away the burdens of man and put off now weak nature. And set aside the thoughts that are most heavy unto thee and haste thee to flee from these times. Now you may be wondering why in the world would I share this scripture? Brothers and sisters, you listening to me, then you understand the Most High is coming. And with that being said, you also understand how I showed you that these spirits, they are ramping, okay? They're ramping up. They're doing whatever they can. These people are a product of strong delusion because they didn't care about the Most High, which makes them the greatest vessel for these demons. They're going off of weak nature, thoughts that they shouldn't have. And I say to you, brothers and sisters, as a warning, because when them bombs drop, everyone's going to be scared. Put away mortal and thoughts and weak nature so these spirits have nothing to attach themselves to you. Because look what's going on. Of all the things the Iranians are protesting over, right? So hijab, it's a covering, it's a veil. It was a form of spiritual protection. Of all the things, not food. I mean, it's the same thing as the Babylonian women. They was protesting about abortion, not food, not inflation, not lack of jobs, not better wages. Be careful, brothers and sisters. And then I always tell people, leave the sensitive people alone. They don't want to understand. Don't try and make them understand. Remember, that's their portion. Their portion is a strong delusion. You can't help those people. This is it. So stay strong. Work on you. Fix yourself. Fix your thoughts. Because if we're not accounted worthy to escape the hour of temptation, Satan's coming for everything that was in our minds. That being said, love you all so much. And yes, we have finally the long-awaited part 4, the biblical importance of Iran. Iran going to war and dropping it on Babylon. That's going to be the next lesson. And boy, I'm going to punch you right in the stomach. The videos for those are gut-wrenching. With that being said, I love you all. Have a blessed day. Shalom.